The great chamber of the galactic convergence shimmered with light. It was said to be the most beautiful hall ever built in the known galaxy. Thousands of crystals hung from the high ceiling, each glowing with soft energy, giving the air a strange mix of rainbow hues. The floor itself was polished metal, smooth enough to reflect the many alien faces that had come to gather. This was no ordinary meeting. It happened only once every 200 years. Rulers, nobles, generals, and heirs of the galaxy's most powerful empires were called together. The purpose was simple yet heavy with meaning: to choose partners. Not partners of marriage, not always lovers, but partners of alliance. The old laws said every race must bond with another. By choosing partners, trust was built, peace was maintained, and no empire would stand truly alone. One by one, names were called. One by one, hands were taken, claws pressed together, tendrils entwined, wings folded in respect. The chamber was full of whispers, claps, and cheers. For some it was tradition, for others it was strategy, for all it was duty, but not for her. At the far end of the chamber sat Queen Serenith of the Valar Dominion. She was tall, her frame draped in flowing dark garments that shimmered like liquid midnight. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes glowing red like embers in shadow. Her hair fell like a waterfall of black silk, reaching almost to her knees. A small crown carved from obsidian rested upon her head. To many, she was beauty beyond compare. But beauty could not erase fear. Serenith was not just a queen. She was a vampire queen. The Valar were an ancient race older than most empires. They had lived in shadow, feeding on the lifeblood of others to sustain their power. Long ago, they were nearly destroyed by coalitions who called them cursed. Yet against all odds, they had survived, rebuilt, and claimed their place among the stars again. But survival did not erase memory. Every species in that hall remembered what the Valar once did. And though centuries had passed, the fear of their fangs, their hunger, and their dark aura lingered. So when her name was spoken, when the time came for her to choose, the silence was heavy. None stepped forward. None dared. Across the chamber, Serenith sat on her throne of black crystal, her gaze calm, her lips curved in a faint smile. She looked like a queen untouched by insult. But deep within, behind her burning eyes, anger coiled like a sleeping beast. She watched as every alien found a partner. The scaled Drakari lords exchanged oaths with the insectoid krill. The tall and shining Zelari nobles bowed to the feathered Varin singers. Even the machine-born Orcs accepted handclasps from the plant-born Silari. Every empire found a bond. Every ruler was chosen, except her. Whispers spread across the chamber, carried on nervous breath. The vampire queen is alone. She is cursed. No one dares touch her. Serenith heard them all. She smiled, though her teeth felt sharp against her lips. She sat with perfect grace, back straight, hands resting upon her throne. But in her heart, the old wound opened again. It had always been this way. No matter how much her people proved their honor in battle, no matter how much they offered in trade, no matter how many treaties they signed, fear followed them. And she, their queen, carried it most of all. To them, she was not a queen. She was a monster dressed in silk. Still she endured. Still she waited, for it was better to be alone than to beg. Yet in the crowd, one man did not whisper. He did not turn away. He was not tall like the Drakari, nor radiant like the Zelari, nor strange like the insectoid krill. He was plain compared to them. His skin was sun-browned, his hair dark, his build strong but simple. He wore no crown, no glowing armor, no jewel of power. Only a dark blue uniform with silver stripes at the shoulders. He was human, Commander Elias Gray, representative of Earth. Humanity was still new to the galaxy. They had arrived only a few decades ago, climbing quickly from isolation to interstellar presence. Many older species still called them reckless, untested, primitive. Yet humans had a strange reputation: fearless, stubborn, and oddly charming. Elias stood at the edge of the crowd, arms folded, watching the ceremony. He noticed what others tried not to see, the way Serenith sat alone while others avoided her. He saw the loneliness in her posture, the way her red eyes scanned the chamber, not with arrogance, but with quiet hurt. He frowned. It reminded him of something from Earth, a story, Perhaps of the girl at the dance no one dared approach. Except here, the girl was a queen feared across the galaxy. He thought about leaving it alone. After all, humans had no reason to get involved in Valar matters. They were still fighting to earn their place. It might be smarter to keep his head down. But Elias had never been good at staying quiet when he saw injustice. The hall grew louder as the final pairings were made. The last cheers echoed. The council leaders announced the new age of alliances. All species stood together, all except one. Serenith rose slowly from her throne. Her black gown shimmered like a storm. Her red eyes swept across the room. None met her gaze. She stood tall, unbroken. But every step toward the council table was a reminder that she walked alone. Then, a voice broke the silence. Wait, the word was not shouted, but it carried through the chamber with strange strength. All turned. Elias Grey stepped forward. Every alien eye watched in disbelief as the human commander walked across the shining floor. His boots echoed against the polished metal, his expression calm. He stopped in front of Serenith. For a heartbeat, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then, without hesitation, Elias extended his hand. The hall went silent. Gasps broke the quiet. Whispers rose like wildfire. What is he doing? Is he mad? No one touches the vampire queen. Serenith froze. Her glowing red eyes widened slightly. For a long time she simply stared at the human hand stretched toward her. Was this a trick? A test? A cruel joke? Her lips parted, and for the first time that evening her calm mask cracked. Elias did not flinch under her gaze. His voice was steady. No queen should stand alone. The words were simple, but to Serenith they struck deeper than any blade. For a moment she wanted to laugh. For another she wanted to tear him apart for daring. But as she looked into his eyes she saw no fear. No mockery, only sincerity. Slowly, almost against her will, Serenith lifted her pale hand. Her fingers, cold as starlight, touched his. Gasps filled the chamber again. Some voices shouted warnings. Others whispered in shock, but Serenith felt something she had not felt in centuries. Warmth. His hand was warm. Human warmth, alive, steady, unafraid. She clasped it. The galaxy trembled. The hall was frozen in silence. Every alien stared at the sight before them. The feared vampire queen Serenith, her pale hand resting in the strong, warm grip of a human. It had never happened before. In the long history of the galactic convergence, no one had dared approach her, not even as a gesture of respect. Yet here stood a man with no crown, no glowing power, no ancient dynasty, just a human in a simple uniform. Elias Grey did not bow. He did not tremble. He simply stood tall, his eyes calm, his voice steady. No queen should stand alone, he had said. The words still echoed across the chamber, soft yet unshakable, whispers of shock. The first whispers began like sparks. Is this real? The human... He touched her, foolish. He will not live long. But others whispered with a different tone. Brave. Strange courage. Perhaps humans are not like the rest of us. Serenith heard them all. She always heard the whispers. Yet for once they did not bite as sharply. She looked at Elias. His hand still held hers, firm yet respectful. He did not grip too tightly nor pull away quickly. It was an honest touch, nothing more. Her red eyes searched his face, waiting for the trick, the flinch, the hidden fear that always came eventually. But she saw none. Instead, she saw something else. Resolve. Testing the human. Do you know what you are doing, human? Serenith's voice was low, carrying like velvet laced with iron. The chamber hushed even further. All leaned forward, waiting for his answer. Elias did not hesitate. I know enough. You are a queen. Queens do not deserve to be treated like shadows. Her lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed sharp. And if the shadows bite? Then I'll heal, Elias said simply. Gasps filled the chamber. Some aliens laughed in disbelief. Others shook their heads, muttering that the man was insane. But Serenith did not laugh. For centuries, everyone had spoken to her with fear, with trembling words, or with thinly veiled insults. But this human spoke plainly, without care for who she was. It was not arrogance, it was quality. For the first time in a long while, Serenith felt curiosity. The council's reaction at the high table, The council elders shifted uncomfortably. The Zalari noble, glowing with golden skin, rose and spoke sharply. This cannot be allowed. The vampire queen is dangerous. The human endangers us all. The insectoid cryo leader clicked his mandibles in agreement. He insults the tradition. No one binds with her kind. Elias turned his head toward them, his jaw firm. Then maybe your tradition needs changing. The room broke into uproar. Voices rose, some in outrage, some in shock, some in reluctant amusement. But Serenith only smiled now, a true smile this time, sharp but alive. You are reckless. Human, she said softly. Elias looked at her again. Maybe, but I won't stand by while everyone pretends you don't exist. Her red eyes lingered on him for a long moment. Then with deliberate grace she tightened her grip on his hand. Gasps filled the air again. The council elders looked horrified. Some rulers whispered in fury, but none dared step forward. For in that moment Serenith made it clear, the human was her chosen partner. After the ceremony, the convergence ended in chaos. Some leaders stormed out, some stayed muttering about humans being mad, others watched in silence, unwilling to speak. But one truth could not be denied. The human had done what no other dared. Later, when the chamber emptied and only the echoes of voices remained, Serenith walked with Elias down the long, crystal-lit halls. Her guards followed at a respectful distance, their dark armor gleaming like polished obsidian. For a while, neither spoke. At last, Serenith broke the silence. Do you understand what you have done? Elias looked sideways at her. I think so. I made a choice. You have angered half the council, she said. You may have angered entire empires. Wouldn't be the first time humans angered people, Elias said dryly. She almost laughed, though it came out as a faint smile. And why, Commander Gray? Why take my hand? You gain nothing. Elias slowed his steps, then stopped. His voice was steady. Because I've seen this before. Back home, someone left out. Everyone too afraid or too proud to reach out. And I hate it. His words were simple, yet they hit her harder than any speech of politics or duty. For centuries she had been feared. For centuries she had worn her crown like armor, and now this human saw through it in a single evening. You are a strange man, Serenith murmured. Humans are strange, Elias agreed. Get used to it. A dangerous curiosity. They reached the balcony overlooking the alien city outside. Towers of glass and crystal stretched toward the stars. Ships moved like silver fish through the night sky. Serenith stood with her hands resting lightly on the railing, the wind tugging at her dark gown. Her eyes glowed faintly as she looked at Elias. You do not fear me? She asked. No, he said. You should. Maybe, he admitted. But fear makes bad decisions. I'd rather trust my gut. She tilted her head, her red eyes narrowing slightly. And your gut tells you to trust me? Yes, her lips curved again. That could kill you. Maybe, Elias said, shrugging. But I've faced worse odds. Her gaze lingered on him, sharp and unreadable. At last she turned back to the city, her voice soft. You are bold, Commander. Boldness has power, but it also paints a target. Elias frowned. A target? There are those, she said slowly, who would rather see you dead than see me respected. They will not forgive what you did today. Elias did not flinch. Let them try. She studied him for a long time, then shook her head lightly. Humans, always ready to bleed. He smiled faintly. It's what we do best. Whispers in the shadows far below the balcony. In the darker corners of the city, whispers already spread. Alien envoys met in secret chambers, their voices low with anger. The human ruined everything. He makes her stronger. If they bond, the queen will no longer be isolated. We must end this before it spreads. Plans began to form. Dark plans. An unspoken bond back on the balcony, Serenith's guards approached, bowing low. One whispered something in her ear about preparations for the night. She nodded, then turned to Elias. Our time here is short, she said. But tell me, Commander, would you still stand beside me tomorrow when the anger grows sharper? Elias met her gaze without hesitation. Yes. Her red eyes softened just slightly. It was not love, not yet. It was not trust, not fully. But it was the beginning of something rare. For the first time in centuries, the vampire queen did not feel completely alone. Closing scene of Part 2A, Elias walked with her back into the palace. Shadows moved in the alleys beyond. Assassins whispered to each other, blades hidden, eyes glowing in the dark. Their target was chosen. The human would not live long, but Serenith's hearing was sharper than any mortal's. She caught the faintest hiss of plotting in the wind. Her eyes narrowed, her fangs glinting as she whispered under her breath, "Let them come." The city of glass towers did not sleep. Ships glided through the skies like fireflies and light sparkled from every window. But while the upper levels of the capital glowed bright, the lower alleys hid in shadow. And in those shadows whispers spread like poison. The human had dared. The vampire queen had accepted. And together they had shaken the old balance of power. Many races felt fear. Some felt anger. A few felt insult. And fear mixed with anger always gave birth to betrayal. The secret council, in a chamber deep below the city, a group of envoys gathered. No names were spoken, no flags displayed. They came cloaked, their faces hidden, their voices harsh with rage. "The human is dangerous," one hissed, his insect mandibles clicking. "He gives her strength." "The vampire queen must remain alone," another growled, his scaled tail twitching. "It is how she is controlled." "If she gains trust," said a third, with glowing eyes like burning coals, "the galaxy will remember her power." "Then the human must die," the first concluded coldly. There were no arguments. Only silence. Deadly silence. The decision was made. A warning in the dark far above, in her private chambers, Queen Serenith stood at the tall crystal window, looking out at the night. The city's lights reflected in her glowing red eyes, but her mind was elsewhere. She could hear the city in ways others could not. Every heartbeat, every whisper carried on the wind. Her people's gifts were both blessing and curse. And tonight the whispers were sharp. Assassins, plans, death. Her fangs pressed against her lip as anger stirred. Not anger for herself. She had faced 1,000 plots before. But this time, her gaze turned to the man standing near the balcony, arms crossed, watching the skies. Commander Elias Gray, the human. He looked relaxed, but she could sense the alertness in his posture, the tension in his shoulders. Humans were strange creatures, soft-skinned, fragile, short-lived, yet they carried themselves with the stubbornness of stone. "You should not stand there," Serenith said quietly. Elias glanced at her, his brow raised. "Why not?" "Because the shadows have teeth tonight," she replied. He smiled faintly as if she had made a joke. "Then let them bite. I've been in worse places." Her eyes narrowed. "You do not understand. They want you dead." Elias's face grew serious. "Because of what I did?" "Yes," her voice was cold. "You reached for me, and now they will reach for you. To them, you are dangerous, not because of your strength, but because you gave me dignity." Elias walked toward her, stopping just a few feet away. "Then they'll have to try harder. I don't run just because someone doesn't like me." For a moment, Serenith studied him. His eyes were steady, his jaw firm. No fear, no trembling. Why? She wondered. Why risk himself for nothing? She turned back to the window, her voice softer now. "Humans are reckless." "Maybe," Elias said. "But we don't abandon people. Not even queens with sharp teeth." Serenith almost laughed, but her smile faded as the faintest shift in the air reached her. Footsteps, too light for guards. Breaths too shallow. "They are here," she whispered. The attack, the glass doors of the balcony shattered. Figures in dark cloaks poured into the chamber, blades glinting, eyes glowing. Assassins moved like shadows, fast and silent. "Stay behind me," Elias snapped, drawing the small blaster at his side. But Serenith's laugh was sharp as steel. "Behind you? Foolish human." She moved. Her gown swirled like smoke as she struck, faster than the eye could follow. One assassin barely raised his blade before her hand pierced his chest, crimson fire burning in her palm. He fell lifeless before his scream could echo. Another lunged at Elias. The human ducked, rolled, and fired, 3 quick shots. 2 missed, but the third struck the attacker's leg, sending him crashing down. Elias kicked the blade away, breathing hard but steady. The room filled with chaos. Steel clashed, energy blades hummed, and Serenith danced through them all with deadly grace. Her eyes glowed like burning coals, her fangs sharp in the light. But more assassins came. Too many. Elias fought like a soldier, not a king. He was not the fastest, not the strongest, but he was clever, using furniture for cover, aiming quick shots, striking when they least expected. He bled from a cut on his arm, but he did not stop. Serenith noticed. In the storm of blades and blood she saw him, this fragile human refusing to fall, and for the first time in centuries she felt something dangerous. Something close to fear. The choice, the last assassin standing, was no common killer. He was larger, armored, his blade dripping with poison, his glowing eyes fixed on Elias. "The human dies," he hissed. Elias raised his blaster, but the assassin moved too fast. The poisoned blade slashed across his side. Elias grunted, collapsing against the wall, his blaster falling from his hand. Serenith's heart froze. The assassin raised the blade for the killing strike, and Serenith struck like lightning. Her hand tore through the armored chest. Ripping the weapon away, she snarled, her fangs gleaming as she dropped the body to the floor. The chamber was silent again. Broken glass shimmered on the ground. Dead assassins lay scattered across the floor, and Elias, he slid down against the wall, blood staining his uniform. His breathing was shallow. Serenith rushed to his side, kneeling, her cold hands pressing against his wound. Her voice was sharp with fury, not at him, not even at the assassins, but at fate itself. "Foolish human," she whispered harshly. "Why do you fight like this? You are fragile, weak. You should have let me face them alone." Elias coughed, but his eyes still held that same fire. "You weren't alone." Her lips trembled. For centuries she had been called monster, curse, shadow. But this man bleeding out before her called her something else, someone worth standing beside. She knew what must be done. She could save him. She had the power, but the price. Her people's gift was not simple healing. To drink his blood would give her strength to heal him, but it would also bind them in ways he did not understand. Few ever survived such a bond. She stared at him, torn, and then Elias, barely able to speak, whispered, "Use my blood, not my life." Her eyes widened. He knew. Somehow he knew. "Trust me," he rasped. "Do it." The forbidden gift. For a moment Serenith froze. Then slowly she bent close. Her fangs brushed his neck. His pulse beat strong even in weakness. She whispered, "Forgive me." And then she bit. Warmth filled her mouth, her veins, her very soul. His blood was fire, strange, wild human fire. It burned through her like nothing she had ever tasted. Strength flooded her, and with it a bond deeper than words. Elias gasped, but he did not pull away. Instead, his hand weakly touched her shoulder, steadying her, as if he gave not just blood but trust. When she pulled back, her lips stained red, Elias's breathing steadied. His wound closed, though weakness remained. The assassins were dead. The chamber was silent. But the galaxy had changed, for in that moment, for the first time ever, a human had given himself freely to the vampire queen. Closing of Part 3. Serenith sat beside Elias, her eyes still glowing, her chest rising with breath she did not need. She looked down at him, at the human who had stood when no one else did, who had bled for her, who had trusted her with his very life. "You are mad," she whispered. Elias's lips curved faintly. "Yeah, humans usually are, and despite the blood, despite the danger, despite the storm that was sure to come." Serenith laughed, soft and true, for the first time in centuries. But deep in the shadows of the city, the conspirators heard of their assassin's failure, and their fury burned brighter. This was not the end, it was only the beginning. The night of the Galactic Convergence's final ceremony arrived, and the palace glittered like a star fallen to the city. Crystals shimmered, casting reflections across the polished floors. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy filled the grand chamber. The air buzzed with anticipation, tension, and fear, especially fear of what had happened the previous night. Whispers of the failed assassination had spread quickly. Half the galaxy's leaders were angry, half were curious, and a few, those who feared the Valar, were plotting new schemes. Yet in the center of the hall, Serenith and Elias stood together, the bond between them no secret now. She had never walked so openly with another being beside her, and he had never walked in a chamber filled with more danger than he had ever faced. The calm, before the storm, Serenith's red eyes scanned the hall. Everything seemed calm, orderly, but she felt the pulse of danger. The assassins had been only the beginning. Their masters were still out there plotting revenge. "Stay close," she said softly to Elias. who adjusted the strap of his uniform with a faint smirk. "I'm right here," he replied. He had healed since the bite, but weakness still lingered. Yet he stood tall, unafraid. "That is human stubbornness for you," she murmured almost to herself. Elias glanced at her. "And what is Valar patience?" "Endless," she said, her lips curling in a shadow of a smile. "You will find that out tonight." The first strike, the ceremony began. Aliens presented gifts, exchanged oaths, and made promises. Leaders whispered behind fans and claws, planning alliances and betrayals. And then the lights flickered. A hum of energy filled the air, sharp and electric. Crystals trembled. The floor shook beneath their feet. Gasps and shouts erupted across the chamber. From the balconies above, cloaked figures dropped into the hall. Weapons in hand, eyes glowing with deadly intent. The council's enemies had struck. Not a single assassin this time, but an army. Serenith's guards surged forward, but the numbers were overwhelming. For every attacker they struck down, another appeared. Elias moved quickly, pulling his blaster and firing. Shots ricocheted off walls, some hitting enemies, some scattering debris. He ducked behind a fallen pillar, then rolled, taking careful aim at another. Beside him, Serenith moved like shadow and storm combined. Her hands glowed faintly as energy blades erupted, slicing through armored attackers. Her fangs flashed in the light as she took down foes with impossible speed. Even the bravest aliens froze as they watched. The feared vampire queen, once avoided and whispered about in fear, was now the savior of the hall. Fighting side by side, Elias and Serenith moved together, a strange rhythm forming. He covered her flank, she cleared the path ahead. They didn't need words. They had survived together before. Trust had already been forged in fire and blood. A large armored figure charged at Elias, blade swinging. He dodged but stumbled, then a black shadow shot forward. Serenith grabbed the attacker's weapon, twisted, and sent him crashing into a wall. Elias gasped. "Careful!" "You are human," she said, voice sharp. "You should be careful." "Not tonight," he replied with a grin. The attackers hesitated. They had expected the human to run, to hide, or to die quickly. Instead, he was facing death with a queen at his side. Whispers spread quickly through the hall. Other leaders began to watch openly. Some were in awe. Some were terrified. For the first time, humans were not only respected, they were feared in a new way. The turning point, one of the enemy commanders, massive and glowing with dark energy, stepped forward. His voice boomed, filled with contempt. "Human, step aside. The queen belongs to us. She is ours to command or destroy." Elias straightened. "She's no one's, and if you want her, you'll go through me." Serenith's eyes flared. Her hands glowed brighter, energy crackling like lightning. Her fangs glinted as she hissed, "You dare threaten my human?" The chamber trembled. The enemy commander swung his massive weapon. Elias fired rapidly, but the shots barely slowed him. Serenith moved forward, faster than any eye could follow. She struck the commander, energy arcs rippling from her hands. Sparks flew. His weapon shattered. He stumbled backward, surprised. Elias charged with his remaining strength, aiming for the commander's legs. Together, they toppled him to the ground. The hall erupted in shouts, some of awe, some of fear, some of terror. Even the council, who had doubted the human's courage, could not hide their astonishment. Blood and trust. The fight continued. More attackers surged forward. Elias was pushed to the edge of exhaustion. One rogue energy blade grazed his shoulder, sending him to his knees. Pain radiated, but he refused to retreat. Serenith's voice echoed across the hall, commanding and fierce. Stand with me, human." "I never left." Elias shouted back, pain twisting his voice. Serenith moved beside him, her hand brushing his arm. The bond they had formed the night before, his blood and her power, glowed faintly, invisible to others but strong enough to keep him alive. Together they were unstoppable. She blocked deadly blows with impossible reflexes. He covered gaps, fired when needed, drew enemies away. Every strike, every dodge, every action showed a perfect synergy between human courage and Valar strength. Victory and respect finally, the last wave of attackers fell. The hall was in ruin. Shattered crystals, scorched floors, injured guards, but the enemy commanders were gone. The threat had been stopped, and it was clear who had turned the tide. Serenith stood tall in the center of the chamber, glowing with residual energy. Her hair, black as night, fell around her shoulders. She looked at the crowd, then at Elias, who had collapsed slightly against her side, exhausted but alive. "Human," she said, voice soft but firm. "You survive because of your own stubbornness, and because you allowed me to fight beside you." Elias, breathing heavily, managed a weak grin. "We fought together. That's what humans do." For the first time, the chamber was silent in respect. No one whispered. No one dared scoff. Even the council could not hide their astonishment. The Valar vampire queen, once feared and ignored, now stood with a human not as servant or subject, but as partner. The aftermath as the hall cleared. Serenith and Elias walked together toward the balcony. The city outside shimmered like 1,000 stars reflected on glass. "Commander," Serenith said quietly, "you have done what no other being dared. You faced death for me, for us." Elias looked at her, still catching his breath. "It was never just about you. It was about doing what's right. And humans? We don't abandon those we trust." Her red eyes softened. "Trust. That is rare among my people. And rare among others too," he replied, faintly smiling. They both knew the night was not just a battle. It was a statement. The galaxy had witnessed a human and a vampire queen fight side by side. Unmatched, unstoppable, bonded not by fear or duty, but by trust and courage. Seeds of change. Even as the palace recovered, whispers spread faster than ever. Stories of the humans' courage, the queen's power, and their bond traveled from council chambers to distant empires. Some feared it. Some admired it, but none could ignore it. Serenith looked at Elias. "You are reckless, human." "I know," he said, grinning faintly. "But it worked, didn't it?" Her lips curved. "It did. But the galaxy will not forgive your kind so easily. They will test this bond." Elias shrugged. "Let them try. They'll see what humans are capable of." She studied him, then nodded. "Then they will learn, slowly, painfully, but they will learn." The grand hall of the galactic convergence had never seen such a night. The remnants of the earlier battle still lay scattered across the floor, shattered crystal, broken weapons, scorched metal. Yet despite the ruin, the energy in the room was electric. Aliens of countless species crowded the chamber, whispers buzzing like a storm of insects. But all attention was on Serenith, the vampire queen of the Valar, and Commander Elias Grey, the human who had dared to reach for her hand. The two stood side by side, unbowed, unbroken, and unmistakably bonded. For the first time, the galaxy saw a queen and a human standing together, not as fear and subject, but as equals. The council confronts them, the council elders, still pale from shock, finally stepped forward. The glowing Zalari noble spoke first, voice shaking. This cannot be. The human cannot claim a bond with the vampire queen. Tradition, decades of law, demand it be." Serenith raised a hand and the room fell silent. Her eyes glowed red, but her voice was calm, steady, commanding. "Enough," she said. "No law exists that prevents me from choosing my allies. And I have chosen. He is not here as a subject. He is here as my partner." Gasps rippled through the room. Some muttered, some whispered, some stared in stunned silence. Elias, standing beside her, lifted his chin and spoke clearly. "She is not a monster to be feared, and I am not a pawn to be judged. We stand together because it is right, not because tradition demands it." For a moment the council was silent. Every elder, every ruler, every noble realized the weight of what they had witnessed. A new respect. The aliens who had once avoided Serenith now looked at her differently. They saw a queen who could wield terrifying power, yes, but also one who could trust and be trusted. They saw a human whose courage surpassed his size, his species, his mortality. Whispers changed tone. Admiration replaced fear. She chose him. And he stood with her, muttered one envoy. "Perhaps humans are not so primitive." "She is not a monster," said another. "She is a queen, and he honors her." Even enemies of the past had to reconsider. Trust had taken root where fear once thrived. Recognition of humanity. The humans in the chamber, watching with pride, cheered quietly among themselves. Elias turned to them with a faint smile. "It's more than luck," he said. "It's about courage and about keeping promises to those who matter." The older species, skeptical for decades, began to nod in respect. Slowly they realized humanity had something unique, something ancient species often lacked: fearless loyalty, courage in the face of danger. and the ability to see value beyond appearances. The human, small and mortal compared to many in the galaxy, had changed the way everyone saw humans. A moment alone later, when the hall emptied and only the quiet hum of energy from the city above remained, Serenith and Elias walked together through the palace gardens. Crystal fountains sparkled, casting rainbows across the pathways. The air smelled faintly of ozone and blooming night flowers. "You are reckless, human," Serenith said softly, though her lips curved in amusement. "And you like it," Elias replied, grinning faintly. She stopped and turned to him. "You could have died tonight. Do you even understand what that means?" "I understand it enough," he said. "You didn't leave me. We survived together. That's enough for me." Her red eyes softened. For centuries, no one had ever stood beside her like this. Not allies, not generals, not even her own court, but he had chosen her freely, fought beside her, trusted her with his life. "I never thought I would see the day," she murmured, "when someone would face death willingly. For me." "Because you're worth it," he said simply. Her heart, long hardened by centuries of solitude, felt something unfamiliar. Warmth. Trust. Connection. A challenge. Accepted even as they walked, Serenith's mind remained sharp. The council would not forget. Other species would continue to test this bond. Some might try to break it, some might even send killers, armies, spies, but she would face them all. "Tomorrow the galaxy will remember tonight," she said. Elias nodded. "Let them remember. Humans don't back down. And I won't leave you no matter what they send." Her eyes glowed brighter. "Then the galaxy will learn. Slowly, painfully if necessary, but they will learn." Public recognition. The following day, the council convened officially to recognize the new alliances formed during the convergence. As part of the formal ceremony, Serenith and Elias were presented together. No one applauded at first. No one whispered. The chamber was tense, and then slowly respect spread. The alien races who had witnessed the night's events began to bow, one by one, to both the queen and her human partner. Some spoke words of admiration, others offered subtle nods of acknowledgement. Serenith's voice echoed across the hall. "Let this be remembered. Fear is not loyalty. Strength is not domination. Trust and courage bind stronger than any law." Elias stood beside her, proud, strong, alive. "Humans honor trust," he said simply. "We do not abandon those who matter." The chamber erupted in quiet approval, the echoes of respect louder than any cheers. A bond beyond fear days later, as the convergence ended, Serenith returned to her private chambers with Elias. They were exhausted, yet neither could sleep fully. The city beyond sparkled, and the palace felt alive with quiet energy. She studied him. "Do you know what you have done?" Elias shrugged, smiling faintly. "I reached for what was right, and I survived." She shook her head, a shadow of a smile forming. "You have changed more than yourself, human. You have changed the galaxy. And you've changed me," he said. Her red eyes softened, the first trace of true emotion in centuries. "Perhaps," she murmured, "humans are not so fragile after all." He grinned faintly. "Fragile? Never." A new era word of their bond spread across the stars. Humans gained new respect, no longer seen merely as newcomers or reckless upstarts. The Veiler, once feared and avoided, gained new prestige, not just for power, but for their ability to trust and accept loyalty. Other species watched carefully, realizing that true strength lay not only in weapons or age, but in courage, loyalty, and honor. The story of the human and the vampire queen became a legend. They were not just allies, not just partners. They were symbols of a new era, one where fear no longer ruled and trust became the greatest weapon of all. The future together, Serenith and Elias stood together on the balcony overlooking the city one last time. The stars above glittered like shards of glass, the ships below moving like schools of silver fish. "You know," Elias said softly, "I think this is only the beginning." Serenith turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. "I agree. The galaxy will continue to test us. They always do. But now I am not afraid. And I'll be with you," he said. Her lips curved. "Then we face it together."